Yo, man, boom, Miss Rusty. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Public Access Podcast, the podcast. And I'm just going to jump right into it. Maybe one day I'll do some different edits, but I'm here with my special guest. He's right here and right now. My special guest is Ricky Overton. Ricky, welcome to the show, man. How are
Welcome.
you?
Thanks for having me, Rusty.
Yeah,
Great to be here, and looking forward to jumping into whatever might come up.
yeah, whatever might come up. Yeah, I'm. This is different than what I was expecting today to be, but that's kind of how things work. Sometimes I went to get my place cleaned today, and they said, "Oh well, your floor needs to be replaced," and I was like, "Oh, okay." So getting my floor replaced, but that also means I'm staying in a different room for the night. So I don't have my normal setup, and I'm in a bunk bed right now, which is a little fucking weird, but you know, you make do sometimes.
That's
So,
all right. Yeah, as you can see in the background, the renovations are going on here as well. Still post
what?
flood from 2022, so
Oh, you had a
finally
flood in
put some.
2022.
Yeah, so we've only got it like six inches through, which is just enough to basically destroy everything down the
Whoa!
bottom line. So yeah, we've just put some walls in for the kids' bedrooms. So yeah,
Oh shit.
it's been a
Okay.
slow it's been a slow road.
Yeah, those. I don't know. Yeah, I hear there's still a lot of flooding here. I mean, we have apparently there's this typhoon coming through. That's I don't know, a super typhoon or something supposed to hit soon, but yeah, I don't know what kind of flooding. So you're pretty close to the to sea level, I guess, or
Yeah, we live on the river, and at high tide, it's on the wall. And on this particular occasion, we had a lot of rain for a couple of weeks, and they let some water out of the dams. And normally, when you look at it at low tide, it's about 40 meters off the at low tide down the ground, about 2 meters down to the wall, and it was low tide, and the water was already at the top of the wall, so the tide was due to come in. So yeah, we pretty much
whoa.
knew we were cooked.
So then, did they have to kind of redo the wall then to make it different, or is it
Yeah,
just sort
we
of wait for?
we basically decided we'd renovate and move the kitchen upstairs. So as a result of that, we removed some rooms from upstairs, which is and at one stage, yeah, we're all living downstairs here, five of us. So it was like living in a one-bedroom apartment for about nearly 12 months. So we've renovated upstairs now, and we were going to extend, but the cost of building over here is crazy. So we decided against the extension. The idea was to lift it all up so we could mitigate any future floods, but I've decided against that. I didn't want to go into debt again too heavily. So yeah, we decided to renovate and make do with the space we've got. So yeah, we're getting towards that now. Just put a bathroom upstairs. So yeah, it's probably that's the main thing I'm working on at the moment is getting our environment right around the house, and that's both from a physical point of view, but also from a cultural point of view as well. Just trying to realign with the kids and getting them to take on some more responsibilities. So I believe they're of the age now where they should be able to take some responsibility over their basics of bathing and showering on time and some basic chores and things like that. So yeah, it's a focus around environment, but also our culture.
So, are you working on these renovations, or is someone else doing this, or how's that work
No,
for
I'm
you?
pretty much only good at demolition and painting.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I like doing demolition a lot. How do you like demolition, or how do you like demolition?
Oh, it's yeah. Well, basically, it's just getting rid of stuff. So whether you're knocking it down or bringing in an excavator depends on the size of the job. But yeah, just cutting and getting rid of it, dumping it, and clearing it out, which still saves money. And then on the other side, it's the painting is one thing that the wife and I can do together. She generally cuts in, and I can do the rolling. So yeah, it's but the stuff in between that, I'll just stick to what I'm good at and let
Right.
those guys do what they do.
Had you done that before? Any of the demolition or painting and any jobs or anything, or was that
Yeah,
something
we've.
new?
I was just laughing with the wife the other day. This is our second house that we've had, um, and we started from scratch with the other house, renovated it, and always joked around that when it looks spot on, it'll be time to sell. And that's what ended up happening. We found this place, and it would look similar to the house that we renovated before we started. So yeah, she's looking forward to actually getting things sorted out and finished so that she can just enjoy the place rather than because when you're living in a reno, you've got to constantly juggle and move the rooms around. So yeah,
Right.
it's moving stuff out and fixing that room up, and then moving it into another room to do that one. So yeah, it'll be good for her to actually to have a house that's settled again.
Yeah, and it's always a whole process, and it's never really getting settled, and being able to be settled in a house is a you know part of the feeling that should get there, but sometimes it gets there when it gets there, and
Oh look, and whilst we've been renovating for 20 odd years, we've had security of tenure. We haven't had to rent or haven't been forced to move out at the end of a lease or have any of those issues. So yeah, I definitely take my hat off to those that have to deal with that regular turnover of having to find a place every 6 or 12 months and move out and start again, and the rents go up. And I don't know what it's like where you are now, but the number of homes to the number of people that apply for the homes is far outweighed by the number of people applying for them. So yeah, I'm
yeah,
so certainly grateful for the fact that we have security of tenure and don't have to move around
yeah.
all the time.
Back in the states, it was like that a lot. A lot of the places that was looking for to buy a house or even rent a house. Um, I mean, it's just there's a few people that can do it, but a lot of people can't, and you end up having to get real crafty with where you're living and how you're living and everything like that. So, or else you just move to the other side of the world and again getting crafty and trying to figure out a way that works. But yeah, it can be a hard thing to get moving and get figured out. And so you've been in the same place for 20 years, or is it 20 years with the old place and this place together? That's what you're saying?
Yeah, it's together. So we've been in this place now for 10 years, and we're in the last house place for 10 years. So yeah, pretty much the children only really remember this house. Two were born here, not in the house itself, but
Oh,
we lived here when they were born, and the other son was, I think he was 2.5 when we moved here. So when we did move, the wife was pregnant, and yeah, we had a toddler. Finished up with three under five at one stage. So yeah, it was that was a hectic time of life. But yeah, I don't think they realise how lucky they are that we live where we do because they don't know any different.
yeah. And so, do you know who was in the house before you? Is that something you care about at all, or is it just
No, not
sort of
really. But yeah, it's a '70s house, so it's 50 years old. And funnily enough, one day the two brothers of the man that built the house dropped in and just asked if they could pop in and take a look. So yeah, that was pretty cool to meet the guys that grew up in the house and their dad built it. And obviously for them, it'd been through some renovations before us and then us as well. So it looked very different from the base of the house that they grew up in.
Did you let them in, or did you tell them to fuck off, or
Yeah,
did give
nah,
them a
for
tour?
sure.
And
Yeah, let him in
okay, that's pretty
for
cool of
sure.
you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
uh, my brothers and sister went to the house kind that we grew up in and wanted to go tour it, and then they were getting upset that that it had been renovated and stuff, and it's like the house was built in in the 80s. Like it's you can't really expect something from the 80s, or I guess even the 70s, like to be kind of the same that it would be. You got to do some stuff. The house is still structurally sound, but you gotta change some things a bit. And so were they coming in like telling you any secrets about stuff, or any um, you know
Oh, they
any
used to
little
just
tips and
yeah,
tricks?
they said that was my room and blah 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 and how dad made the patio out or the roof out the back extra high and just little things like that. But yeah, it was nice to, I guess, to share that feeling that they had in seeing it again.
Yeah. um, yeah, because you never really know what goes on in a house before you get in there. And um, you know I guess it's better if there's a lower turnover rate between, or with tenants. Like it's not like every year you have a different person there. It's only been one family in there. And I've been in some wild places. I've been in some places where also where people have died. And
Hmm.
I don't know if you've ever been in a house, lived in a house where someone's died before. Maybe, maybe not. Have
Not
you?
that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. Uh, that was an interesting thing. And yeah, something felt off about that place. But even if I didn't know that someone died in that house, I would think that there was something odd about that house.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, there
Yeah, well,
was
I guess
there
that's
was
why they can come in and do the clearings
yeah,
to
yeah. I have some friends that do that now, and I wish I knew them back then. And you know, it's a good thing to do. And uh, I felt it after it was done when my friend did that. Maybe I don't know, maybe a year ago or so, maybe a little more than a year ago, he did it, and I felt like an instant difference in the way the house felt. But
mm.
it could have been in my head. I don't know. Could have just been something, but that was an experience. But then there was always something I was like, yeah, that's kind of bullshit. Like, I don't believe any of that. But now that I think I'm starting to be like, okay, yeah, maybe that is real. Like, or at
Oh, I think
least,
there's definitely more to this world than what we see with our 3D eyes. That's for sure.
yeah, yeah. Um, so okay, so let's get into your business. I'm curious. I wasn't planning on jumping in like this, but it kind of works that way sometimes. So how how did you get into what you're doing? What was the event or aha moment? And you probably answer this, but I guess I'm curious about it. What your aha moment was for this is something I need to start because yeah, for it might not be something that a lot of people would jump right to.
Yeah, well, for me, it was like I feel like my journey probably started 30 odd years ago when I was a teenager to deal with looking at my anger and basically why I was had a leaning towards violence from a pretty young age. And I sort of looked into the lineage of family and domestic violence and alcoholism and so on and so forth. And undiscovered and discovered a family secret as well, where um, basically the parent became the aunt, known as the auntie, and the grandmother became known as the mother, and there was a whole layer of a family secret there that uh, resulted as due to some untoward behavior of what would be my great grandfather. So that sort of seemed to flow on then through the lines. My grandfather grew up domestic violence as well against my grandmother. And my father, I remember when we were younger, there was inklings of that as well. Um, so yeah, there was certainly that baseline of lineage there that sort of might have passed through DNA and upbringing as well. So that's sort of where my journey started, and that was really more about me understanding what my activations were, and I call it the zone, where essentially, and I don't use the word triggered a lot now. I prefer to use the word activated. Um, but yeah, when I was activated, my initial immediate response would be physical violence. That was my first go to. So that was obviously at 17, you're sort of growing up, you're sort of at that age where you're about to head out into the real world, not protected, with the scenario of being a youth and school and so on. So I knew that I had to get a handle on that, not only because of the laws and the fact that you're hurting other people, but also the shame and guilt that comes along with that after the fact and after you calm down. So that was probably the starting point for me, was learning to understand when I was in that zone, when I was activated, and then learning to actually take a step back. Um,
When did you figure that out, or like when did that start
that was when I
coming
was
to
about
be?
18.
You okay? So you were
So
aware of what was going on when you were 18
so
about
30 years
like
ago, yeah. So that was sort of the link to the type of work that I do now, which is emotional regulation in with men and teaching them how to bring awareness to themselves, awareness to others, awareness to the environment around them. So that was sort of fast forward 30 years. But what got me into this stage of it, the aha moment, was really I'd realized that I'd sort of buried my head in the sand. When I first started at 20, I left uni. I was studying criminology at uni. That's where I met my now wife, and I was going to be in the police force. That was the path that I was going to take, and I sort
oh
of
geez,
realised that I wasn't really willing to submit to the what I could call the command and control structure of the police force. So I changed pathways there. I was football. I was playing rugby league as well, and that was kind of reinforcing the violence as well, because to be a front row forward in rugby league, basically it's your job to dominate the other forwards on the other team, and it didn't really resonate with me anymore to continue to play that game. and also go on this path of addressing my violence. So at some point that changed. There was a couple of injuries that occurred to players as a result of my contact with them. One ended up with a broken neck, and someone else ended up with a broken back. So that sort of played on my mind for a number of years,
Shit.
which essentially led to me having a breakdown on the football field as a front rower, crying when another player went down again, and I just really knew that it was just time because I guess to harness that anger and to bring awareness to it also meant that I didn't have the same level of ferocity in my own approach to the game anymore, to that violence. So I ended up moving away from league and went into business, and we went into lobbying government departments, community organisations, etc., for a job creation program. So I've always had that sort of inkling towards social justice, and programs for social cohesion. And then I looked into globalization and the New World Order and so on, and sort of became more aware of that scenario. And there was sort of part of me that got to a point after 5 years of lobbying, that I realised that there's not a lot I can do about it. So I essentially decided to bury my head in the sand and focus on business. And that continued on for 20 odd years. Refrigerated freight business, food manufacturing, things like that.
Oh,
And I ended up just getting a salary role once that all broke down. Actually, so there's probably was the first part of it was the business. The contract finished and the business was closed down. And I always said my worst case scenario was to get a job. And ironically enough, that's where I ended up heading. And so I actually didn't get my first full time job until I was 38. So I'd been self
so
employed from 20 to 38.
what did that feel like when you got your first job of that sort?
Well, I knew that I was entering into the cage that I'd been avoiding or trying to avoid for the 20 odd years before that. So the loss of the business, to some extent, was something that I had to grieve. That was a loss of identity, a loss of freedom or perceived freedom. And but my children were 3, 4. They were all sort of under 5 years of age. So I made the commitment that I would do the salary thing and work in that 9 to 5 scenario, and at least until the kids were all in school and the wife could return to work full time. So that was sort of that was about 5 years ago now. So that was the point where I said, okay, now let's have a look and see what business I might look to go into. Um, yeah, so that's kind of what got me looking at the coaching space. And yeah, so I sort of had the option of taking on a coach or going and doing a coach's course. So I decided to. I actually did take on a coach for health, because at that point I'd buried my head in the sand that long, suppressing and numbing with alcohol, and at that stage I'd ballooned out to 130 kgs. Currently sitting around 115. I got down to about 110. Probably my ideal weight is probably around 100 kilos. So I never actually. I reached the goal of losing 20, which got me down to 110, and the coaching that I got really helped with that. And I thought, yeah, this is an area that I would like to work in. So I went and enrolled in coaching courses and did some rites of passage, and that's when I was introduced to men's work. So that's what's kind of led me into the men's movement, movement or the idea of men's movement. Yeah.
So, how are you finding people to work with you? Where were you going for that? Were you like jumping into men's groups and saying, "Hey, I'm Ricky. I'm here to help," or just, I don't know
Yeah, well,
what
I
can you
first started. I really didn't feel like when you go through a coaching course. Of course, it's a sausage machine, as I refer to it. They just pump people in and pump people out because all they're doing is selling their courses. They don't care who
right?
they unleash onto the world at the end of the day. And part of the training is after 2 days, they suggest you go out and start coaching. Best thing you can do is go
Right.
out and start. And
Yeah.
to me, that didn't really fit right. I didn't feel like I felt like it was necessary to actually go out and embody some of those changes myself within myself first. So I did the coaching courses, but then I went and did men's work, a couple of retreats, some rites of passages, etc., so that I put myself through the inner work and dug in deeper and really started to reignite and explore those deeper things that I guess I'd really tucked away and suppressed as a man.
So, what were
So,
those
but to answer your
retreats?
quick question, it was mainly Facebook. So I started up a Facebook group, and that sort of grew to a couple of hundred men, and that eventually led to from within that group my first pilot program called the Centered Man program, which ran for 3 months or 10 weeks, the first program, and 3 months for the second program. And yeah, I call it a pilot because for me it was more about testing, writing it, and then testing it to see what the results were, and um, and the results were good. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge to get men to invest in themselves, to
Sure.
basically go inside themselves and see what's there. And often it's the things that they've been running from their whole lives.
Shadow work.
Yeah.
That whole deal right there. Did what was your first sale like? Your first person that bought the program.
Yeah, I basically I promoted it so that I had 10 that signed up, and that was the group that I was aiming for, was a group of 10. I didn't
Yeah.
feel like I felt it was comfortable for me to hold space for 10 men. Um, I think it's as an online space for the type of thing that it was. I think if I went any further than that, I wouldn't be able to give them what they need, and they wouldn't have the time to check in and interact with the group the way that they should. But yeah, I mean the sale felt good. Um, for me, that's probably the hardest part is I don't like the sales, and ultimately until you learn to love the sales and
Yeah.
the actual selling. It's one thing to be able to coach and help men. It's another thing to be able to sell and make a business. And it wasn't really my intention. Was definitely to build a business and leave the salary job. And I've since changed that view. For me, it's one of those things. It's more purpose based work. So at the moment, it's more about lobbying to get other leaders on board to form a forum of men that want to actually help create a platform on a larger scale. So I feel like I've done the research now. I've done some testing. As part of that group that I did run, I did a lot of free work as well. Essentially, the idea was that men would tap into the group and share within the group, but typically they would be contacting me directly on Messenger and not interacting in the group, which meant that my personal time was getting impinged upon which at the time was fine because I was there to serve. But I'd often get a lot of calls from men that were reaching out because essentially they were ready to kill themselves. And yeah, that's heavy work.
So, how do you ground yourself after that? After someone calls and says, I'm going to kill myself, I need your help right now. You go and you work them through what you need to do. What do you do when you hang up that call?
Typically, I'd go out and ground myself, and more often than not, just simply do an energetic release, such as any emotions or energy that are currently within me that don't belong to me. I release and then release that energy, and also any parts of me that have left behind, I call that energy back to me. So basically, a release of their energy back to them, and also a calling in of my energy back to me.
Did that work the first time you try it? You tried it, or
Yeah,
did it take a while to get the?
I guess I practiced that before I did. Well, was at that stage, because even when we're just doing the parts work or shadow work within a group, I'm a fairly empathic person, so I tend to take on their energy anyway. So a lot of the work that I actually got to release my own stuff was witnessing others release their stuff, and just holding that space. So I did a couple of years of learning to hold space for others, before I even took that function on. So by the time I did do that, I was comfortable in that space.
So, um, so then, do you have your phone always ready to answer if someone reaches out to you, or what's your thing? Do you have a time when your phone's off and you'll call back, or is it like if someone, like back when we have pagers, someone does a 911 text or
Oh, look, if
message.
someone messages me, I'll generally respond. Or if it feels like it's urgent, then I'll respond straight away and just get a feel for where they're at. And then from that, if necessary, I'll give them a call and take it from text to voice. Or I encourage them to leave voice notes. I find is a good way as well, because you can pick up a lot more on a voice note than you can on a text, but also gives them some space, to absorb what they're hearing, but also encourage them to listen back to what they've said on that voice note as well, because I believe that a lot of the wisdom that we contain for is for ourselves, and in listening to ourselves, we give ourselves a chance to actually hear ourselves.
I like that idea a lot. I might steal that from you. So just so you know, if I start telling people that I'm only going to be accepting voice messages, I like that a lot because it's really going to go and get them to let that out. Like you can let it out with a text message, but then it's also when you're getting it, more about where their head's at and
Yeah.
like what I really need to get to work with them. And then so are these people that are like they have you on retainer, I guess would be the way to say it. Or is it like they're part of your group and they can reach out to you whenever? Or how's that work with you?
Yeah, if they're part of an active container, that's the case, and I'll generally we'll have a check-in group as well. So there's an accountability function, and yeah, generally I like to. One of the big things is getting them to tune into that awareness. So when I encourage them, that when they feel activated, and when I say activated, that can be joy as well. So where triggered tends to be the lower den- density areas of anger or shame or guilt. but it's also, to me, trigger kind of infers it's an external thing, whereas to me the activation is an internal thing. So I
Right.
encourage them to look at the view from an activation. So, and then firstly, just to acknowledge that I'm activated, and that can be a positive thing, it can be a negative thing. It's an emotion. But then the second part of that is to, okay, well, notice where you are, what you're doing, or who you're with when that activation comes up. And as you probably know, a lot of the times the activation has nothing to do with what's going on right there and then, but what it brings up in the body from that's already stored, that's been activated by that
And where
scenario.
in your body, and where. But then I also, yeah, because it might not be the person or situation that's going on, but that person or situation that's going on brings out that some it brings it back to something from the past that is activating,
Yeah,
and that's that deep and inner part of the onion that needs to be addressed at some part, or else it's just gonna keep happening over and over. And so, is that something that, like, what's sort of your approach to get to that inner part of the onion, or is that too much of secrets of the trade?
oh no, definitely not. During some of the work that I was doing on myself, I was introduced to this idea of parts work, which I now know was based off IFS, or internal family systems, with Dr. Richard Swartz. Um, but yeah, this particular model was naming parts as well. So it's more. I noticed that you've got hypnosis in your email address. So essentially, that's what it is. It's getting into that part hypnotic state, where they're relaxed enough and comfortable enough to be guided in to find out what that part of them is. Um, so later on, yeah, as I learnt more about the IIFS model, in terms of exiled parts, manager parts, etc., and the firefighters, I'd realised that I'd been doing parts work by myself for 20 odd years, where I
What
was
do you
able
mean?
to talk to different parts of me without necessarily. I used to call them personalities, and I used to joke about it that I've got multiple personality, but I'm not going to get diagnosed. Yeah, so I was familiar of talking to different parts of me all the time, because. But what it did give me was the freedom to break away from my conditioned belief in duality, only good or bad, or right or wrong. And that's probably the biggest breakthrough for me, is that self forgiveness, and the self acceptance of those different parts, and knowing that that one part doesn't define who I am. So, for example, with around my drinking, at one stage I was the only one in my family that declared myself as an alcoholic, and but then I did that to acknowledge that there's an issue, or that there's a problem. There's a behavioural predisposition to using alcohol. But then I realized, well, I don't want to define myself. That's only one part of me. It's not like I'd get up and drink every day. I go and work and I do what I need to do. And really, it's still a choice. But recognizing that a part of me really likes to drink. There's other parts of me that would really like to go out and do other things. And often they're in conflict with each other.
Like
And
what?
once you have that awareness that there are different parts within us that are dictating different functions, then we can not only, and there's no bad parts. They're just doing what they think is right. So when you understand that, and can can actually get to a point of loving that part, even though I used to judge that part and think that part of me was evil and that it was bad and that I had to cage it up and put it away, and because it was violent and abusive and so on. But in reality, that was just that part trying to protect me, still trying to protect that little boy that was bullied at school, that grew up with a stutter. So once I understood that, then it's like, okay, you've got to function, but it's a matter of getting in tune with the sovereignty of oneself, which is known or is referred to as self. Who's driving the bus? And that's the others would refer that back to the radical self responsibility. Um, but in saying that, you could have a manager part that's because part of my job is in management, and my manager parts are very strong. And that also infers control. So I've got to be aware of, well, when am I being too controlling? When am I needing to control things in order to protect myself from the lack of self worth or not good enough or whatever? And then sort of understanding, okay, why am I being so controlling right now? What is it that I'm actually afraid of underneath that control? Yeah, there's so many layers to it all. It's all but yeah, for me, it's I do like to get into the depth and like I'm happy to do work with men at no cost if they're prepared to do the work. My payoff then is I guess there's two forms of payoff for me. One is the satisfaction of seeing men turn themselves around, or actually, yeah, just excel in themselves. That's satisfying in itself. Or yeah, getting pulling somebody off the edge so that they don't kill themselves is satisfying as well. Um, but for me, if I'd like to see that if I help them come off the edge, then it would be good to see them actually go to the next phase. But more often than not, they'll come off the edge. They're no longer in crisis, and then they'll just fall back into the loop again until it hits until they're on the ledge again because they haven't done the work. They haven't done the inner work. Um, we had a brother that killed himself a few weeks ago, and I looked back on my messenger thread, and I hadn't spoken with him for 2 years, and I looked at the messenger thread that we had at the time, and it was a similar thing, and one of the things that he talked about was when he is in that crisis point, not necessarily having the access to the help that he needs because he couldn't afford it, and that's sort of the one of the drivers for me is I believe that people need to invest in themselves, and that's part of the benefit is investing in themselves. Actually, whether that's time, money, energy, resources, etc. If people can't
Yeah,
afford it, they should have access to the help that they need. Um, and then there's
yeah,
different layers to that. Obviously, people that are in the space that are making a living from it, they need to get paid for what they do, which is fair enough. So that's where I've sort of found the challenge is getting the people that are in the field to at least contribute some of the content or knowledge that they have to this idea of bringing in creating a, a platform that gives people free access, and then it becomes a tiered support where they can get the initial help that they need at no cost to introduce men to the idea of doing the work. Because yeah, unfortunately, a lot of men just aren't open to it. That they're just so conditioned that they'll bottle it up until that emotional state gets too much, and then they don't see another way out because they haven't learned how to communicate. They haven't learned how to accept those darker sides of themselves, or they haven't built the trust within themselves to understand their worth. And yeah, it's personally, I think the suicide rates are just going to continue to climb, and that's a really sad thing. And but I think that the conversation needs to change. It needs to turn into empowerment of men and men taking responsibility for themselves and their families, if they have families, for themselves and their communities, for themselves and their mates, but first and foremost for themselves. And that's, for some, that's not an easy thing to do because they've never actually had the leadership from a young age, where they've grown up with no father or just a father that's not present. And I think that's a global issue. Um,
Agreed.
to a great extent, and whether we talk about the wars and things like that, and how many millions of men were taken out in those wars, and the trauma that's been created, and the patriarchy and so on. But
Well, I
um,
mean, more people that are like in the United States Army, more people are killing themselves by far than are dying in action.
yeah,
And like every day, so my friend that I was living with, he was he's retired from the army. He works for with a nonprofit called Platoon 22, and it's like there's 22 people a day every day, and that were in the army of some sort that kill themselves,
yeah,
and like that's wild. That's a lot of people, and that's something that's not talked about because it brings down the morale of a lot of stuff. But that's something I assume it's pretty worldwide, and it's not just the the armed forces of sorts. I mean, that's a lot of people who are going through it and don't really have many ways to or resources to work on it at all. It's just sort of, here you go, hope for the best, and yeah, it's a bit messed up, and so
yeah, and they're definitely on the extreme end of it as well, because they've been essentially broken down. So they've already been conditioned as children, and then they're broken down and reconditioned as soldiers, and then
yeah,
they're released with no reconditioning back
right,
into
yeah. What do you
society
do from
with
there?
whatever traumas they've also witnessed and taken on as a result of that. Um, and that's the thing that there's, it's just, I mean, I think whether there's guns involved and a defined war, um, society is at war on multiple levels, and spiritual levels is one of those. But just the control and the conditioning to keep us operating and in that loop of operating and working for the system. And yeah, if you don't have all those fundamentals, just in work, employment, um, let alone your accommodation and food and all those, just the basics. If you don't have those basics, then you're already disadvantaged to a great extent. And it's generally those that are in those scenarios that don't have the stability. Even some of the men that were in my group, even they said my market there were men that are working average jobs that probably don't have a great career path to move beyond those average jobs, but are stuck in the day to day grind. So for me, it's about learning how to thrive, not just survive in that environment. Even though your environment's not necessarily going to change, yes, you can do some adjustments to your environment, um, but essentially, it's the inner work. It's understanding how you're conditioned, how your beliefs are formed, the fact that you can reshape those beliefs, fundamentals, the fact that your thoughts aren't necessarily your own, and so like people that aren't awake at all, they believe their thoughts are their thoughts, and they believe they have to respond to those thoughts or live a life based on those thoughts. They don't understand that a lot of those thoughts are coming from their subconscious conditioning, from the music they've listened to, from the news, from the Facebook, from all sorts of places. That these
Right.
thoughts can be completely not their own at all, but because
And
they think them, they associate that that's their thoughts. So at the start of the group, when I first said that, I had a slide that said, "Your thoughts are not your own." And then I asked the men what they thought about that, and some of them were very perplexed. It's like, "What do you mean they're not my own? Of course they're my own. They're coming in. They're coming in my head." And then we went in to talk about the conditioning and all the rest of it, and how our belief systems form that, and then values and beliefs and attitudes, etc. And then by the end of it, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, no. And then I played that slide again, which is by now 6 or 8 weeks later, and sort of 50 slides later, and had the same thing. And by then, they'd sort of opened up to the idea that, oh, so yeah, if I'm the one driving the bus, I can actually choose which thoughts serve me and which thoughts don't serve me. And
right. Yeah, I mean, we're getting. I think my friend just told me 10,000 like
thoughts a day, yeah,
advertisements a day,
yeah,
which is crazy. Just I mean, just certain like anything you are doing, driving down the road, listening to music, watching TV, scrolling, like you say, scrolling Facebook, doing anything, and even subtle things that other people are pushing. That like that's going in your head. Your subconscious is always listening, and whether you realize that or not. I mean, that's how that stuff comes back up. Like it's in there, but it's just filed away as what you're going to be doing automatically. And you're like,
yeah,
oh, okay, yeah, that's yeah,
and the scary thought is it can't differentiate.
right,
So even if you're joking, it still goes into
yeah,
somebody's head, and
right,
our own negative self-talk reinforces that. So that's
yeah,
another basic fundamental around awareness is awareness of your own negative self-talk. How
yeah,
are we talking to ourselves? And
or
like a
what you're
classic
taking in. Sorry, go ahead.
example, I used to spill a glass of milk, and I'd say, "Oh, you fucking idiot."
And
Now it's
then you're
like,
thinking, oh, I'm a fucking idiot.
exactly. So all you're doing is telling yourself you're a fucking idiot. But
Yeah,
then it's like, so then I've trained myself to reframe that. If I spill a glass of milk now, it's like, oh, that was very careless of you, Ricky. Now you're going to have to clean it up, or something
yeah,
like that.
and
And it's
that's it.
completely
That's a
different.
whole. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a big change of everything, and uh, that's how you frame it. A simple reframe of your thought pattern can change your whole life. And
yeah,
so, if people are ready for a simple change of their thought pattern and change their whole life, where are they going to find you in the world or the internet, or how are they going to hold you to work with you or find your work? Down here in the
yeah.
stuff, but yeah,
Happy. I'd suggest sending them to the Mouse, the Man, and the Monster, which is a Facebook group. Um, and yeah, that's there's a lot of work out there around the archetypes. And for me, I was like, you know, I, I think for the average man, they don't need to know about the king and the warrior and the lover and the magician, let alone the other 28 or more that exist. But if they can look, the simple version for me is just the mouse, the man, and the monster, and that's the pole. So if you're being the mouse, you're probably not sticking up for yourself. You don't have boundaries. You're people pleasing. You're playing it small. When things get tough, you go and hide away in your retreat in your little mouse hole, and you don't come out and face things. And then generally there'll be part of you that doesn't like that, and that builds up and that builds up, and then it becomes resentment or whatever, and then that's where the monster comes out and lashes out. The lava spills out the top of the volcano. The release comes, um, and then that creates the cycle again, where the explosion then leads to guilt, leads to shame, leads to negative self talk, and so for me, the whole idea is just the centered man, so the man in the middle, the man in the middle between the mouse and the monster. It's okay to not judge each other when not judge oneself when you do go into mouse or you do go into the monster, but be aware of it, and then use your centering techniques, your breathing, your grounding, etc. Bring yourself back to center, and it's a practice. But yeah, so for me, just Ricky Overton on Facebook. I don't. I actually. I went through a period where over the last 12 months, I took a step back deliberately. I fed into my group that essentially I was taking some time back, and went and did some volunteer based work on a organised committee for a men's retreat, and took a mentor on myself for 12 months, and really got off Facebook, and I had 6 months off Facebook in the last 12 months. And yeah, when I could jump back on, I was like, oh, it was like turning on the news after not watching the news for so long. You just realised just what it is, and it's you can't even the algorithms themselves. You can't even reach your own men in your own group. They want you to advertise to the men in your own group. So yeah, it's even hard to communicate with. You can build a group. It's a waste of time building a Facebook group these days, predominantly
Yeah,
because the reach has gone in your own group. You'd think you would post in your group and your group would see it, but a lot of the times they don't. Um, so yeah, I'll give you my deets, my numbers there. But Ricky Overton on Facebook is the easiest way. The website I closed down as well because I really wanted to take some time back to see where and how I wanted to move forward. And funny enough, I've felt the pull to come back and resurrect the Centered Man project. So it's definitely what I've realised is that it is part of my purpose and part of my calling. I kind of was turned off by what I found in the industry to some extent, and the men that were putting themselves forward as leaders. I lobbied them and I tested them to see where they sat, and a lot of them aren't as embodied as they project themselves to be.
sure.
So I've sort of started to move towards the older end of the men's work field, and I'm going to just focus on lobbying because I never really intended to create a program as such. That was more a result of not being able to get the leaders involved the way they would have liked. So in the end, I decided to put a pilot in place at least so I could test it for myself. That was also part of my ongoing development as well. But yeah, for me as a coach, um, I sort of take a hybrid approach where I think there's that therapy aspect, the counselling aspect is one half of it, looking at the past and then gauging where you are in the present, and then the coaching aspect is okay. Well, where do you want to go to? Where do you want to get to? So for me, it's a full approach where it is important to look at the past. It is important to gauge where you're at in the present, and then it's important to then have a plan to go forward and accountability around that.
Yeah, and that gets you there, and that gets the people to you where they should be going. And yeah, thank
And
you.
the,
Go ahead.
and the biggest thing is really about allowing people to learn the basic tools so that they have the tools so that when they move forward and when they're not getting the coaching, for me, if they can bring that awareness and just that breath, the one breath, for me was an amazing tool. Regardless, just learning to automatically take that one breath. Sometimes you might need more than one breath, but even if you can just give yourself that microsecond, that 1 second or 2 seconds, that's often enough. Once you've done the reps and trained yourself and your awareness is there, that's enough to allow you to go into response rather than reaction.
Yeah, we really need to get people to fuck off with getting defensive and stuff when people tell you to stop and take a breath. Like
Yeah,
and get into I'm gonna kick your ass right now if you tell me to take a breath one more time. Like go fucking take a breath. It's good. It's gonna help you out. Like, we're not
Yeah.
saying this to be an asshole. Like, just go do it. Like, that's
Well,
good stuff, Ricky.
probably that's basically what my wife and I used. We literally said, "I breathe." So that's our thing. Is if one of us says to the other one, "Breathe," that's a sign that you're
Yeah,
getting activated, and maybe you need to
yeah,
take a breath. And
and you should.
yeah,
That, yeah,
it's once you have that sort of understanding, and that's like
yeah,
a word, the secret word as such. Right? It doesn't have to be a whole sentence or anything. It can just be a breathe. Or if the wife sees that I'm taking a breath, and sometimes she'll go, "Oh, what's wrong?"
yeah. That's
Nothing,
great.
babe. I'm just regulating.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's yeah. That's at least going. That's going in the right direction for sure, and that's
yeah,
only making things easier for the two of you. So,
yeah.
yeah. Ricky, thanks so much for being on. I enjoyed talking with you, and hope you can enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. I believe it
Yeah.
is
Yeah, we've got State of
sometime
Origin on
probably.
tonight, so I don't watch a lot of league anymore, but that's one of the few games a year that I will watch because it's
Okay.
top level. So yeah, it's exciting.
Well, yeah, enjoy the hell out of it, and yeah, take care of yourself, and we'll talk again later. All right. You bet. All right, Ricky Overton. I'm in a fucking bunk bed. Like, I don't give a shit. I'm in the Philippines though, so I'll sleep in a bunk bed for a night. I've done it a couple other nights while I was here. It's not terrible, but you guys go check out Ricky. If you want to yell out Ricky, you can do that. Like higher learning, you can do that when you talk to him. Tell him Rusty sent you. Don't tell him I said to do that. Don't do that either. Probably, I wouldn't suggest it, but that's what I'm thinking right now. Uh, Rusty used to have these commercials where they'd say, "Wow, we Ricky Henderson." What was? I don't, if you guys remember what the commercials were for that, it was something in the '90s. I think it was "Wow, we Ricky Henderson." Who knows? It's good I can remember that, but not everything else. So, thank you everybody so much for being here. Find me, rustydiamond.net. We'll have all the stuff you need. If you can't find it on there, I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, fuck it all. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night. And that is the show.